It's been a rough few weeks, Murray. Ever since I killed those 3 Wall Street guys.
Okay, I'm waiting for the punchline.
There's no punchline. It's not a joke.
You're serious, aren't you? You're telling us you killed those 3 young men on the subway?
Mm-hmm.
And why should we believe you?
I got nothing left to lose. Nothing can hurt me anymore. My life is nothing but a comedy.
Well, let me get this straight. You think that killing those guys is funny?
I do. And I'm tired of pretending it's not. Comedy is subjective, Murray. Isn't that what they say? All of you, the system that knows so much, you decide what's right or wrong the same way that you decide what's funny or not.
Well, okay, I think I might understand that you did this to start a movement, to become a symbol?
Come on, Murray. Do I look like the kind of clown that could start a movement? I killed those guys because they were awful. Everybody is awful these days. It's enough to make anyone crazy.
Okay, so that's it. You're crazy. That's your defense for killing 3 young men?
No. They couldn't carry a tune to save their lives. Oh, why is everybody so upset about these guys? If it was me dying on the sidewalk, you'd walk right over me. I pass you every day and you don't notice me. But these guys, what, because Thomas Wayne went and cried about them on TV?
You have a problem with Thomas Wayne, too.
Yes, I do. Have you seen what it's like out there, Murray? Do you ever actually leave the studio? Everybody just yells and screams at each other. Nobody's civil anymore. Nobody thinks what it's like to be the other guy. You think men like Thomas Wayne ever think what it's like to be someone like me? To be somebody but themselves? They don't. They think that we'll just sit there and take it like good little boys, that we won't werewolf and go wild.
You finished? I mean, there's so much self-pity, Arthur. You sound like you're making excuses for killing those young men. Not everybody, and I'll tell you this, not everyone is awful.
You're awful, Murray.
Me? I'm awful? Oh yeah, how am I awful?
Playing my video. Inviting me on the show. You just wanted to make fun of me. You're just like the rest of them.
You don't know the first thing about me, pal. Look what happened because of what you did, what it led to. There were riots out there. 2 policemen are in critical condition. You're laughing. You're laughing. Someone was killed today because of what you did.
I know. How about another joke, Murray?
No, I think we've had enough of your jokes.
What do you get
I don't think so.
when you cross
I think
a
we're
mentally
done
ill
with your
loner
jokes.
with
That's
a
it.
society that abandons him and treats him like trash?
Call the police,
I'll
Gene.
tell you what you get.
Call the police.
You get what you fucking deserve.
This video, made by University of Washington students RJ Sensioko and Cameron Gerke, will analyze the possibility of using an insanity defense rule for the character Joker in the 2019 film. The Joker illustrates the mental struggle and decline of failed comedian Arthur Fleck and his development into becoming the notorious criminal mastermind known as the Joker. We selected this film for analyzation because of the deep philosophical elements and dilemmas linked to the movie. What's considered fair? Does society value and care for the mentally ill? And so much more. In the movie, the Joker commits several crimes, ranging from misdemeanors such as illegal possession of a gun and vandalism, and to felonies such as murder. Throughout the film, the Joker is seen murdering several people who he believes has wronged him or society, and including his own mother. Some people might think that this sort of behavior could qualify Arthur Fleck as insane, but could Fleck successfully plead insanity in a court of law? That might depend on what insanity defense rule is on the books in the jurisdiction in which the crimes were committed. Next, we will be scrutinizing the different types of insanity defense rules to find out. The insanity defense is based on the belief that a person cannot be held fully responsible for an illegal act if they were so mentally incapacitated at the time of committing the acts that they could not conform to the rules of society. This judgment can also be difficult to make. The first rule is the M'Naghten Rule. The M'Naghten Rule arises from the insanity defense plea of Daniel M'Naghten in the mid-1800s. M'Naghten believed that the English Tory party was persecuting him and set out to murder the Prime Minister. After mistakenly killing the Prime Minister's secretary, the jury judged M'Naghten not guilty by reason on insanity. To qualify for the use of the M'Naghten Rule, one person must be affected by a mental disease and not know that the crime they committed was wrong at the time of execution. In the movie, the first 3 murders committed by Arthur Fleck were in self-defense. This was a scene in the subway. After murdering his 2 friends in his apartment, he does nothing to cover the scene up, and after killing TV talk show host Murray, he lets himself get arrested. As with all insanity defense pleas, it would be difficult to prove if Fleck knew at the times of the murders if they were wrong or not. However, the murders do seem to happen at the spur of the moment, while Fleck was feeling intense emotions, and the murders definitely weren't premeditated. In the interview on the late-night TV show with Murray, Murray Franklin discovers that the Joker killed those 3 Wall Street guys on the subway, which was huge news for the city of Gotham. Murray questions Joker, who laughs and says that the murders were funny. Then the Joker continues to say, "I killed those guys because they were awful. Everybody's awful these days. It's enough to make anyone crazy." Obviously, the Joker believes that the murders he committed were in the right, as they were bad people, and before shooting Murray on live TV, he also calls Murray an awful person. The Joker would qualify for this insanity defense because he fulfilled the 2 requirements, being a mentally ill individual and believing that the crimes he committed were not malevolent at the time of committing them. The next rule is the Irresistible Impulse Rule. The Irresistible Impulse Rule was first applied in Ohio in 1934 and includes acts of passion. This rule differs from the last rule in that the person committing the crime may know that they are committing it, but has to either be driven by an irresistible impulse or had a diminished mental capacity to resist performing it. One could argue that this rule was in play when the Joker admitted to having a rough week, meaning that he was under mental duress, and in the scene with Murray Franklin, the Joker could not resist giving Murray what he bleeping deserves, as he came to the interview with a gun.
The next rule is the Durham Rule. The Durham Rule was created after the Durham versus United States case in 1954, and almost all jurisdictions had gotten rid of it by the early 1970s. It was probably the broadest of the insanity defense rules, allowing the defendant to plead insanity based only on the notion that whatever crime they had committed was because of a mental disease or defect recognized by mental health professionals. However, the defendant doesn't have to prove that they were affected by their disorder at the time of the crime. Throughout the movie, the Joker killed several people and was affected by his mental disorders, and without having to prove that he was affected by the mental disorders, it would not be difficult to plead insanity under this rule, especially since he had had at least one disorder on record prior to the murders. The American Law Institute rule is the next one I will be discussing. In 1962, some members of the American Law Institute, the ALI, were dissatisfied with the current rules for determining the credibility of an insanity defense. They devised a rule of their own that requires the individual to lack the ability to appreciate the criminality of their behavior at the time of their misconduct or to conform to the requirements of the law due to the existence of a mental health disorder or defect directly affecting them. The Joker didn't believe the murders he committed were bad, as he was seen joking about them at the end of the movie. Through this rule, the Joker could plead not guilty successfully. The Insanity Defense Reform Act rule is the last one we'll be going over. In 1984, after John Hinckley assassinated Ronald Reagan and was found to be not guilty because of his insanity ruling, the U.S. Congress enacted the Insanity Defense Reform Act. This act took from the American Law Institute rule the ability to plead that an individual is unable to conform to the laws at the time of the act, but had the inability to comprehend the wrongfulness of the act. The Joker could plead not guilty under this act because he could easily be seen as unable to comprehend the wrongfulness of his actions. Towards the end of the movie, he jokes about having committed some of the murders. If the hearing took place at the end of the movie, when he has definitely lost all sense, he could definitely plead insane by these rules. In conclusion, the Joker could successfully plead guilty of insanity within accordance of all of the insanity rules that have been covered. He would not, however, be acquitted and would instead be most likely submitted to a mental hospital for treatment and rehabilitation, which is also seen at the end of the movie, where he is a patient in Arkham Asylum, although not necessarily reformed quite yet. The insanity, oh my gosh.